Okay, so now we're going to talk about some patches out of the original advanced patch book for the ARP-2600. I'm going to pick out the ones that I think are sort of the most educational in terms of the way this thing works, and hopefully this will help you get some ideas for ways this can be patched. So this patch is called 3 timbres and 3 envelopes. So remember we talked in the last video, there's not really a way to separate the envelopes necessarily. This patch sort of does the best possible version of that. So let's start from oscillator 3, because that's sort of the most straightforward path. So we have the oscillator going into the filter, and then the amplifier here is short-circuited by something else, but we're going to still be coming out of this VCF in the mixer. And because we've assigned the ADSR to the filter, we've still got some control over its envelope. So I just have a held note being repeated here on the keyboard. And so we'll open that filter. So this is sort of like filter gating as envelope. Okay? Second voice. It sounds better with the sine wave. We might switch this to triangle just for the sake of YouTube, making this make sense. So we have the sine wave coming out into the VCF. So this is replacing that output, this hardwired output from the VCF. And then we're using the attack and release. So this is gating the filter. This is gating oscillator 2. Okay, because that's turned up. And we have that over here on the VCA knob. Okay, if I switch to triangle, maybe a little more obvious sawtooth. Very obvious. Now this is not going through the filter, but we do have control over it here. Here's our attack and release. Okay, coming from the second AR filter. Okay, so those two together make nice sounds. You can, obviously fade in and fade out voices, fade out and fade in voices, change their attack and release. Just by controlling, very, very simple. So then what we've done is the gate output is coming down here to the envelope follower input on the lag processor. So what the lag processor does is it takes whatever's coming out, whatever you're putting into it, and sort of like lags it, right? Not a good definition because it uses the word. So like if I have a really sharp attack and release, the lag is going to make it a slower attack and release. So we're essentially creating a different envelope from this AR envelope because we have some additional control over the attack and release that's happening here. So we're like sort of doubling this envelope. So in essence, we do have 3 envelopes happening here because we have the filter gating, we have the regular amplifier gating, and then we're using the lag time to sort of change this AR envelope. So the output of the lag processor is going over here into the ring modulator. So you remember when we talked about the ring modulator, that's sort of combining these two oscillators to make sidebands. But instead what we're doing is we're using the sawtooth hardwired connection from oscillator 1. And then we're using the lagged AR envelope to trigger oscillator 1. So this sort of becomes its own gate, right? And this is set to DC. And that's important because if we're set to audio, the gate doesn't come through as an envelope. It comes through at audio rate. Okay? Then we're taking the output of that. So this is really just oscillator 1. There's no ring modulation going on here. We're just gating it. taking the output and we're going straight into the mixer out. And what that does is it misses all this stuff, and it means that everything's just coming straight into the reverb. So the reverb knob becomes both reverb and the volume for oscillator 1. Okay? Hopefully we're able to follow that. You can obviously copy this patch and sort of think it through for yourself. So you can hear I've got... Let me put it on that note. Okay, so out of the keyboard I've just got, an arpeggiator running that's repeating these notes, so it'll keep it going. Okay, so here's our oscillator 3, oscillator 2, and oscillator 1. And, we're doing fun stuff with tuning to make it sort of tense because I can't stop thinking like a film composer. Notice when I play with the lag processor, it'll change what's happening there with oscillator 1. Okay, so I hope that gives you some ideas. You'll hear the lag time is kind of smoothing out the AR envelope. Okay, so very useful to know.